Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Completionist. For this episode, it is simply titled Your Questions, My Answers. And basically what this episode is going to be, guys, is about 3 weeks ago, I gave each and every one of you an opportunity to get to know me better. So I don't think I'm going to get any more questions. So anyway, I have the answers to my questions typed down there. So let's get started on answering every question that you guys were going to ask me, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Now I think more than likely I'm going to have to separate this video into two parts because I tend to be a little descriptive when answering my questions. So anyway, I hope the answers to your questions are satisfactory, so let's get started. Alright, well the first set of questions comes from my buddy Chris Loveshacks, and the first question he asks is, who do you think would win in a fight, Chuck Norris or Charlie Sheen? Now Chuck Norris may have the advantage with that extra fist under his beard, but Charlie Sheen has tiger blood and Adonis DNA in him. Well, Chris, in terms of that question, I am a big fan of the 80s action movie genre, and one thing that I have constantly seen Chuck Norris do that Charlie Sheen has not is eliminate total armies all by himself. If you watched any of the Chuck Norris movies, like the Missing in Action series or the Delta Force series, he can literally take on armies all by himself and take them out. And unfortunately, I haven't seen Charlie Sheen do that single-handedly. So my answer for that question is definitely Chuck Norris. His second question is, what is my favorite arcade game? Now, I absolutely love the arcade scene. I really wish it wasn't a dying scene because I absolutely love a lot of the arcade games for its time. But my favorite arcade game of all time is the 4-player G.I. Joe arcade game. I just absolutely love this 4-player run-and-gun shooter. It is so much fun. The entertainment factor of this game is highly addicting, and I especially love going against all the Cobra villains that have full voice dialogue, and some of the boss fights can actually get really intense when you're going against people like Major Blood and the Baroness and Destro and obviously Cobra Commander. So anyway, if you guys haven't played the G.I. Joe arcade game, please do, because it is my favorite arcade game of all time. And his last question is, what game would I like to see a sequel for? Now, there are two games that come to mind I would love to see a sequel for. The first game is my favorite N64 game of all time, which is Blast Corps. I would love to see a sequel for that game. If we actually had a sequel for that game on this current generation of consoles, you could make the destructive environments that much more larger, you could put in bigger obstacles, you could use more demolition vehicles, the explosions could be that much more massive, you could have cooperative play. And I just think that there is a lot of great things you can build on with that already existing Blast Corps title. So I would absolutely love to see a sequel for that game. And the second game is one of my favorite PS1 RPGs. I personally think it has my favorite RPG battle system of all time, and that is Legend of Dragoon. Legend of Dragoon is a pretty straightforward RPG that's actually really enjoyable. It does have a very unique battle system, and it actually had a pretty good story. So I'm kind of disappointed that the game did not have a sequel, because I just think it's one of those great PS1 RPGs that certainly deserves one. Alright, and on to the next question. And the next question comes from Solitude's Grace. And he asks, are there any video games that my wife and I regularly play together? Now, unfortunately, my wife and I do not really play video games anymore. She only stays loyal to her favorite video game series, so we barely play video games at all. But there is one game that me and her have actually completed together, and it was actually a cooperative effort, and that was Star Fox 64. If you check out my wife's top 10 video games of all time, Star Fox 64 is one of them. And me and her actually completed that game all on our own. We got every medal, we got every path, we did the game on normal mode and hard mode, and it's actually one of my favorite video game memories I've shared with my wife. And it was actually her that actually helped me beat Star Wolf the second time around, because I was really having a hard time beating him on hard mode. So she's actually really, really skilled at that game, and I'm happy that both of us managed to complete that game together. Alright, and the next question comes from Tangosaurus Rex, and he asks, what are those things that are lining the top shelf above the monitor there? Well, let me show you. Alright, Tangosaurus Rex. So this is what is above my computer monitor. And to be honest, all the things that you see here, only 2 of them are mine. Everything else that is on this shelf is my wife's. The 2 things that belong to me is the Cosmos action figure, since I am a fan of the Xenosaga series, and Kaneda on his motorcycle from the movie Akira, which is one of my favorite anime movies of all time. The Cloud figure, the Roy Mustang figure from Full Metal Alchemist, and the Bahamut from Final Fantasy X2 are all my wife's. So let me just come in a little closer. And you see here, my wife is a big cat fan, so she has all these little cat pictures and cat figurines. As a little girl, she was a really big fan of My Little Pony, so she collected all the My Little Mini Ponies. And right there, and she has a little dragon statue right there and a few more cat figurines. So anyway, I hope that answers your question, Tangosaurus Rex, because I don't think there's anything else I can really fit on that shelf. Now that's done, let's move on to the next question. Next question comes from Bakamon13, and he asks, what is my most hated moment in one of my favorite games? Well, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know my favorite game of all time is Xenogears, and by no means is Xenogears a perfect game. There are actually moments in that game that I actually despise. Probably my most hated moment in the game is just the horrible pacing of the second disc. The first disc had that good balance of story and a lot of playability. It had some really good dungeons, and it had a very good pace to it, because you would have a story element, and then there would be an element in which you go into a dungeon, and it was a fairly long dungeon. So I actually liked that kind of pacing between story and playability. But once we got into the second disc, it was almost completely story. There used to be story sequences that lasted anywhere from a half an hour to 45 minutes, and there wasn't that many playable sections throughout the entire game, so that was a little aggravating. And another thing that I actually did not like in the Xenogears game is during the ending animation sequence, the English dubbing was horrible, and it was off sync with how the characters' mouths moved. And that was just something that really got on my nerves. But, you know, I tried to not let it get the best of me, and it didn't truly take away of how wonderful of a gaming experience that was. The next question comes from TJ Bush, and he asks, have I ever forced myself to complete a highly recommended or popular game that you didn't like? The question is no, because even though I do get a lot of people recommend games to me that are outside of my anime game style interests, I just simply don't play them. It's not because that they're bad games or that they're popular. It's just the anime style games that I love, and unfortunately I do have a large backloggery of games because I do take the time to complete them. But the thing is that eventually, you know, I will get around to actually playing some of the more popular games. You know, there are some really popular games I would love to try just to see what all the hype is about, especially BioShock and Uncharted and stuff like that. But for the time being, I'm perfectly content in playing my anime style games, because those are the games that I tend to enjoy the most. Now the next 3 questions comes from my buddy Kevin, the Mega Man Cave. And his first question is, what was the biggest or most epic moment in any game I've played? I think the most epic moment of any game that I've played is back in university when I was playing Metal Gear Solid for the first time. That game had a very addicting factor on me, to the point that, you know, I used to stay up all night to play it because the story was just that intense, and I really could not put the controller down. And I really wanted to get through the game as fast as I could because I just wanted to see what would happen next. I remember playing the game until the late hours of Sunday morning, and I finally got to the Metal Gear Rex battle. And I just found that boss battle incredibly intense, but I always kept getting beaten by that boss. And it was about 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was dead tired. And the thing is that I just said to myself, I'm not going to go to bed until I actually beat this boss. You know, I just wanted to beat him just to see if I could do it, because I just kept getting killed by him all the time. And I always found that boss battle really intense, because when I finally beat Metal Gear Rex for the first time, you know, I was pretty much down to a sliver of health. And I was just so proud of myself for actually beating him on my own without any help from any guides or like anything along those lines. So that's probably one of my most epic moments in gaming. His second question is, what is the most rewarding completion of a game you've ever had? I think my most rewarding completion has probably got to be for the game that I've spent the most number of hours for. And so far, that's Final Fantasy X. To this record, it took me over 220 hours to fully complete that game. And where did the 220 hours come from? Well, simply two places, and that's Blitzball and the Calm Lands. And you know, when I finally got that game completed, I just kind of gave myself a good pat on the back, because it just took a lot of time, especially to get all the ultimate weapons and to do the monster arena and things along those lines. It just took a great deal of time. But to be honest, I think the time record is going to be broken, because one of the games I'm trying to complete right now is Rogue Galaxy. And I currently have 260 hours invested into that game, and I think it's going to take me over 300 hours to fully complete it. So once I get Rogue Galaxy done, I think that's probably going to be my most rewarding completion. And his last question is, what system would I most like to complete the games list for? Well, if you guys aren't already aware, I keep a lot of Microsoft Word documents of every anime style game I would like to collect for every major system. And I have finished my anime style North American Sega Saturn game list. And even though the next system I'm going to work on is going to be the Sega CD, the game system I would love to complete my anime game style list for is the Sega Dreamcast. I just find that the Sega Dreamcast has some of the most unique and enjoyable anime style games out of that current generation of consoles, because a lot of the anime style games that came out for the Sega Dreamcast did not come out for any of the other consoles for that time. And I think that the Sega Dreamcast for me is probably going to be one of the most expensive systems for me to collect for, especially the anime style games for that system. So it's probably going to take me a while, but it is the system I would like to have my anime style game collection collected for the most part. The next question comes from the 420 Northwest, and he asks, what is my favorite game for the N64 and PS3 or 360? Now for the 360, I do own a few anime style games for the 360, but I haven't played any of them for the simple fact I haven't even opened up my Xbox 360 yet, just simply because I don't have a place to put it. But for the PS3, my favorite PS3 game of all time is Valkyria Chronicles, and my favorite N64 game of all time is Blast Corps. And the final question for this episode, for part one of your questions and my answers, comes from my friend Dinky Dana. And it's kind of funny, because every time Dinky Dana has a Q&A, I usually like to tease him a little and give him a little bit of an embarrassing question, so it's only right that he does the same. And his first question is a little embarrassing. And he asks, of all the female characters in anime and video games, which three are your favorites and why? Well, my first favorite female character is Freya from the Valkyrie Profile series. I just have a thing for strong women, and I just love how vindictive and evil this woman is. Like, she will not bow down to anybody, and she will always talk down to you, because she's a god and she shows no sympathy whatsoever. In any Valkyrie Profile game, she is just like a total bitch, and she'll do anything to demean you. And throughout the Valkyrie Profile games, that's what she is. She's Odin's bitch. She will do anything for her master. And the thing is that in that game, she just has some of the best battle quotes and some of the best attacks in the Valkyrie Profile series. So, Dinky Dana, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to do my very poor impression of a guy doing Freya's voice and how she says some of her attacks. Like, before she attacks you, she'll say something like, "Your corpse shall feed the ravens." And then she'll say, "Divine assault." And the name of her attack that she'll totally obliterate you with is called Ether Strike. And it's just when she yells out those attacks and just does massive damage, I just absolutely love that character in the Valkyrie Profile series. Now, my second favorite female character in anime and video games is a female character from my favorite fighting series, which is Rival Schools, and I love Hinata. Now, I'm not embarrassed to admit I love the Japanese schoolgirl outfit, and I do have a thing for it, so nothing wrong with that. And you know, out of all the female fighters that wear the schoolgirl outfits, such as like Sakura and Karen from the Street Fighter series, I think Hinata wears it best. It just brings out a certain cuteness factor in her, and when she has that like short hair and that white headband and that schoolgirl outfit she wears, it just makes her really cute. And lucky enough, she's actually a really good fighter in the Rival Schools series, so that's the reason why I like her. Now, in terms of anime, my third favorite female character in anime and video games is the female character from my favorite anime of all time, which is Dominion Tank Police. And that female character is Leona Osaki, and she's just a short little Japanese girl with red hair who is a total spitfire. She can be totally cute in one scene and then totally mean the next. But I'm a big fan of the English voice actress that portrays her, and even though I've watched Dominion Tank Police and the new Dominion Tank Police, I just love seeing that character on screen because she has a certain cuteness about her, even though she can be a little mean from time to time. So anyway, guys, that takes care of part 1 of your questions and my answers. So anyway, guys, I'll try to get the rest of the questions answered in part 2. So part 2 will be up shortly. So anyway, guys, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best.